I'm Erica Hollingsworth, and you're listening to the F1 podcast.
What's up, everyone? It is Richie here from the F1 podcast. Happy March 17th, 2025. Episode, I guess, season 5, episode 3. Andrew Cleary, how are you doing, my man, with my co-host? And I just gotta say, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you too. Yes, I'm wearing my festive green in support for St. Patrick, the foremost patron saint of Ireland, where everybody now just celebrates in good fun and spirit, which is great to see.
Do a barrel roll.
Um, John, you and I have had some pleasant times celebrating St. Patrick's Day together when we were in university. I miss those days. My liver does not.
Do a barrel roll.
I'm just gonna say on a Saturday, a FIFA tournament is very much different compared to what we were doing in university. Having said that, it is St. Patrick's Day, and I think a lot of teams are hoping for that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow going into China. Because I don't know about you, Andrew, but this was an interesting way to start the season. And I think a lot of people are, or a lot of drivers particularly, are not looking forward to another wet race.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think you could have had a more chaotic first race of the season than what we had in Melbourne this past weekend. I mean, you might as well have given everybody one of those carnival teacups to drive in because everybody was spinning around
You
like
lose.
like it was no other's business. You know, low grit track plus rain plus a lot of first time drivers. First race this season, that adds up to chaos.
Yeah, what is it? Formation, opening lap crashes, 6 DNFs, rain, 4 safety cars, a Lando win, Albon P4, Oscar Heartbreak, and 7 different constructors in the points.
Also, a Ferrari disaster class that we
You
have one
lose.
already, one for one this season.
For the first time in 129 days, we have a different, well, sorry,
The
for, yeah,
1,029
my fault, my
days.
bad, my bad, my bad. Yeah, bye, yeah, bye, yeah, bye. Okay. For the first time in a 1,029 days, we have a different driver leading the Drivers' Championship. Lando Norris won his 5th race of his career. And you know what? He leads the Drivers' Championship for the first time in his career. And he's the first McLaren driver to leave the championship since Lewis Hamilton from the 2012 Canadian Grand Prix.
I would say that was a textbook weekend for Lando Norris. I mean, pole position, fastest lap, and for a guy who's traditionally not very good getting off the line, especially on these wet conditions, very slippery surface, he was able to, defend against Max, who was coming on to Oscar there at the beginning of the race once the five lights went out, and he did a tremendous job fending off Max towards the end after that final safety car. He showed a lot of great composure this week, showed a lot of great maturity. And honestly, Lando was the driver to beat, in my opinion, especially with that rocket ship that McLaren have
I think
in
not
that
only
recipe.
that, there was also a moment where I think he went into the gravel, and we saw even his counterpart, Piastri, beach his car basically in, and even no matter how experienced the drivers, it clearly for some reason this start in Australia, like a lot of drivers struggled. We had Hadjar don't even like.
We didn't even get a proper formation lap out of the gate.
Yeah, we had some turmoil at the start, and just I don't know about you, but like I generally feel bad for him, and a lot of these rookies that they've been training weeks for the start of the season, and it's just like 60 and Fs.
Yeah, especially like Hadjar, right? You waited your whole life to get to this position, F1. You want to make good impression in your first race, part of the Red Bull Junior team. You have like Helmut Marko, you have eyes like Christian Horner watching you start, and you didn't even make the second turn of the formation lap, right? And he was gutted. I mean, hand in the face, like tears coming down his eyes. But what I thought was a really great moment, and I want to say Lewis Hamilton, we'll get into his race, but I mean, he's a true ambassador of F1. But I want to say that his father, Anthony, is as much of an ambassador for the sport as Lewis is. Going over to Isaac, consoling him, letting him know that, you are here for a reason, right? Don't let this one mistake cost you your entire chance. And just being there for him, I thought that was a real special moment. And, you know, Anthony, going to Ferrari, he didn't have to do that. But the fact that he came out, met him behind the paddock there just to console him, I thought that was a really great touch and just a touch of class from the Hamilton family, as always.
Yeah, that was especially for someone like, Lewis has gone through some heartbreaks himself that during his career, or just some tough beats. Like, yeah, I mean, we all talk about Abu Dhabi in 2021, and just some of the situations that has happened, with fighting some other drivers. But like, yeah, if from a class perspective, like hands down. And I mean, as I said earlier, while this maybe start of the season or this start of the race, start of the 2025 season was a little absurd in the sense that, I think hopefully that was just a one-time thing for him because he has a bright future in this sport. And even, I think China, hopefully the weather will hold up and that we'll actually have a proper start and a proper race and see what he can bring. Because he did look good all weekend in practice for a first time go. It just happens, man.
Yeah, the last two races for him have been tough. The last race of the year in Abu Dhabi last year, he stalled off the line in the F2, kind of cost him the championship there, and then couldn't make the formation laugh off this year. So hopefully China again is a different story. But again, after the formation lap, we had two accidents on the first lap. Doohan spun out, and then a real uncharacteristic spin out from Sainz where he just torqued the crap out of the Williams and just spun it into the wall, which killed my predictions this weekend. I don't know if anyone saw us on Instagram.
Oh, we're done,
predictions this
dude.
weekend.
It's done.
Yeah, I had George Russell finishing in the top six. That was the only one that won because I had Leclerc finishing in a podium. We'll get to Ferrari later. We have questions about that. And then Sainz scoring in the points. And he had a great weekend in terms of qualifying. And then that spun just undid it, which really sucks.
Yeah, it was interesting because like both him and Alex Albon looked really good in qualifying, and having that situation, especially first week into it. But then he started to play engineer. I don't know if you saw the James Vows talk very highly of Mr. Engineer Carlos Sainz and giving the opinions to Alex Albon, who really helped him get to his place on his race. I thought that was pretty hilarious just to see. Is like because I know some people can soak and just if the minute they get eliminated, they go, I don't know, want to go into the room, don't want to deal with it. But he was there helping his teammate out because he knows how important it is for Williams to score any sort of points and get out of the bottom of the constructors' standings. And, they were able to secure, I think, 10 points this weekend, which is a good start compared to what they had last year.
It's funny because Alex made a comment in the F1 post race show where he kind of wished this type of performance happened towards the end of the season because now there's an expectation for Williams to continue this momentum throughout the year, right? And it's funny. I see how it worked out because as for one side, of course, you really want to be able to score as many points as possible, right? But I know what he's coming from in terms of expectations. But you know what? Maybe that's what the Williams team need. They need that extra confidence to start off with, especially if they want to be number one in the based on our predictions, I think they're going to be the best team in the midfield. So, again, perfect start for them in terms of that case.
And especially that they were able to capitalize on maybe some misfortunes for Haas this weekend. And also, I mean, let's just talk about Nico Hulkenberg, always just willing to just rub it into me and throwing me off completely, just scoring first points for Kick Sauber in the first race for him, where they didn't even are able to score points until I think it was the second last race of the season last year. Man, like just pure execution from P17 to get to P7. How is
It does help when you have six cars retire in front of you, or but also the fact is proper strategy, right? In terms of when we had that final After Alonso crashed out on lap 32, there was that final safety car, or there was a safety car on lap 34, and then those the penultimate safety cars. We had an additional one on 45, 46. But um, I think it was around four. I think that's when like the tide of the race really turned on lap 45 when it was dry. People did have the inters on, but it was the dry line was coming, and they did change the slicks. Um, First and foremost, I just want to say McLaren are going to run away with this championship if we don't have four safety cars and rain every race. Because the gap that they built in that like 33 lap stretch between the first lap and when Fernando went into the wall. Again, uncharacteristic for Fernando to do that type of mistake. But
I thought he was a rookie this year.
oh, he is. Yeah, there's another rookie that spun out this weekend, Fernando Alonso. But I mean, they created like I think it was like a 17-second gap on Verstappen per like Piastri and Norris. Like basically on similar conditions. So that car is a legit rocket ship. And I don't know if that's to do anything with that flex in the rear wing, but I mean overall, I mean that like the 17-second gap is ridiculous and a complete change in tide.
I think it was also interesting that towards the end of the race, you had the situation where the Ferraris decided. I guess let's jump into
Yeah.
a tough weekend for the Tifosi. While they might have looked good in practice 1 and 2, and I don't know if it was practice 3, they looked well, but qualifying was a little awkward. And then going into the race, you had competing strategies. A couple of close calls to wheel racing, and then you had a moment where, okay, do you pit now or do you stay out, hoping that you think that you can clinch the gap? And then when they didn't pit, I think it was Lewis Hamilton. He led for not even that long of a race. He was struggling completely, and then thought it was interesting just the back and forth between him and his engineer. Him telling him, please let me drive, and then the guy kept reminding him multiple times, and he said, "Please let me drive, let me deal with this." So, yeah, I think a lot of teams, and especially the Tifosi, want to not the ideal start for Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari.
I bet Hamilton really wish he brought Bono with him to
Yeah,
Ferrari.
You lose.
To be honest with you, because there was a lot of like communication, especially it was so funny. I think was it Adami is his race engineer, just
I think
telling him
so.
to press the K1 button, try the K1 button. And he kept asking it over and over and over again. And like Hamilton every time, very politely, basically just said, "Shut up and let me race," sort of idea. And I was waiting for Lewis just to snap because he was so patient, so patient, so patient, but he got super frustrated. And you're right. Lap 47, when the rain hit right after uh McLaren went off, like both Piastri and Lando kind of hit I think it was like, after that DRS zone, they went off before the final two turns. Um, Lando boxed for enters because of the wet. And so it was kind of like the gamble was, do you stay out on slicks? And hopefully that the rain kind of subsides because what I didn't understand, Ricci, is I don't know how you can miscommunicate rain amount in the same team. Because Charles was getting like a class 3 number. Also, I loved how they used class numbers to signify rain level. Class 1 is like a drizzle. Class 3 is like hard AF, I guess. But you have one engineer saying class 3 rain to Leclerc, and then you have Lewis's engineer saying, "Oh, it might rain. We're not too sure. Hopefully not anymore." It's like, do you guys not look at the same radar data? Like, what are we doing?
Not only the same radar, don't they sit on the wall together?
Well, that's what I don't understand. And how does Fred not step in and say, "Look, you two got to get your shit together so that we can make a complete creative strategy?" Because Ferrari decided to stay out on the slicks, which I think could have worked. I know the course was wet, but I mean, it could have worked considering that there was accidents by Bortoletto and Lawson, which triggered a safety car.
Which ruined
And
the
you only
race.
had a
Yeah.
lap like the final 3, 4, 5 laps, which I think the track was drying up at that point to be able to maybe compete on slicks. And all you had to do is follow behind the safety car on the racing line, right? Which would have been dried up by the people at inners behind him. So, if you're going to stay out, stay out. Don't come in the next lap and put on inters.
I think it was also interesting because I think it was Charles that was on the radio saying that his car is basically filled of water. And then it was something on the engineer question, and he's like, "Or what do you mean?" And he's like, "My car is filled of water." And like, I'm shocked that there's not maybe like a hole in the car that all this water can get released. There should be. There has to be. Come on.
But I mean, like, it only took one race for the Ferrari disaster class to become apparent. And it won. And it's in its engineered communication between drivers and in between like the team. How does Fred not just step in there and say, guys, get your shit together. We got to make some calls here.
We're just hoping that in China they can figure it out. And if we can switch segues to another team, I think maybe the story that has not been talked about enough, I think this weekend personally, is Mercedes.
Yeah. Oh.
Kimi
Again,
Antonelli.
good fortune.
Yeah.
They received some good fortune, but I mean, Kimi Antonelli, welcome to F1, my man.
P16 to P4 at the checkered flag for his first official race in a Formula One car.
I don't know if you saw the overtake that he had on Albon in like the chicane there towards the end of the lap. How was that not televised? That is like overtake of the year in those types of conditions.
And then Mercedes successfully appealed the decision to have he was demoted. They after receiving
It was
a
an
5 second
unsafe release in the pit lane, I guess. But then apparently some new and significant elements came forward. I'm like,
what, rain?
the hell FIA, like, do you not have the instant replay there already to begin with?
He became the 69th driver to score on his F1 debut, and at 18 years, 203 days, he's the second youngest point scorer in F1 history, behind now four-time world champion Max Verstappen.
Which we haven't talked about so far. And it's funny because like how far are we into this podcast? We usually like, oh, we know Max Verstappen is like the talk of the town. He's not this week. And I mean, to be fair, he raced fantastically with that car.
Don't count him out.
Do not count him out. No, and honestly, he kind of, to be fair, the safety cars helped him out quite a bit to keep up with Lando. I thought this was like, he should have finished P3 because, in my honest opinion, Oscar Piastri had just a real bad, unlucky situation. He drove his heart out this weekend. I thought he was fantastic. Just, St. Paddy's Day, luck of the Irish. Well, I guess down under, the luck of the Australians, like reverse. It's like bad luck, I guess, at this point, because he just had an unfortunate slip up. But Max really held on towards the end there. There were a couple opportunities to overtake that he just couldn't do with Lando. But honestly, very solid P2 finish, putting that car in a position again where he's maximizing everything out of the RB21.
I think it'll be interesting to see how they will do in China this upcoming weekend. I think if
may I make a mention of a silent assassin that was this weekend who went about his business?
Was it the rain?
Nope. There's a guy I don't really like, to be honest with you, and he made me eat my socks. Put it that way, or eat my hat. Lance Stroll.
Is he Canadian?
He is. And I mean, very silent assassin Lance Stroll this weekend. Went about his business. No mistakes in the rain. Traditionally, he loves these conditions, and honestly put that car into P6, started P13. Another huge jump. Again, a lot of retirements behind him, but he just ran a solid race. Pitted correctly when everyone was boxing for on lap 45, and was able to get, honestly, a ton of points this weekend, more than I anticipated for Aston Martin.
And it's also important to note that he admitted that, and we don't really hear this a lot from Lance Stroll, that he admitted that the team made a great call to bring him in for intermediates towards the end of the race. And that was like obviously key for him to leap in those top tens.
Yeah.
And Andy Colwell said Stroll did not put a wheel out of place all race.
Oh, he was fantastic. I mean, they didn't show him much on TV, but sometimes that's okay.
Yeah, if you're getting
mistakes
points
or anything like that, right?
If you're not expected to be getting podiums, and if you're just like, we say, what is it? Is the Moneyball reference? He gets on base. He gets points.
Exactly.
He just gets points. That's all we care about, and especially in a constructors race that is going to be quite competitive between 4 to, let's say, 8.
I just wasn't anticipating after the first race of the season, Kick Sauber being ahead in the constructors over Ferrari. Like they're all they are leading the engine team battle, right? Which is just incredible to think.
So let's speaking of which, let's go through maybe just the standings after one. I will just do it quickly, just mostly the constructors. McLaren and Mercedes are both tied with 27. Red Bull, Racing Honda, RBPT 18. Williams, Mercedes 10. Aston Martin 8. Kick Sauber, Ferrari 6. Ferrari 5. Alpine, Racing Bulls, and Haas all tied for 0. Keep in mind, it's not panic season yet.
Nope.
We got one race. We're one race into 24, but I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah, and if we want to talk about going into China, the FIA have already made a regulation change for this weekend. So the flex on the rear wing that is allowable when the car is not in DRS, it used to be 2 millimeters. From what I've read online, McLaren were the ones taking full advantage of that flex in terms of performance. Now that flex has been dwindled down to 0.5 millimeters.
Mm-hmm.
So a 70, like it's like a, if I'm going to do the math correctly, like a 75% reduction pretty much on the flex. So again, I don't know how much that's going to make up in terms of performance. But if that makes a significant battle, like if McLaren were taking full advantage of that to enhance their performance, then expect a closer race in China this weekend.
Is it a sprint this weekend?
It is a sprint this weekend, which is, fun. The second race of the year, we're having a sprint race. I mean, for us people in North America, the race, if you're on the East Coast, it's like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Which is just not fun. No way I'm getting up for that.
But I credit is credit due. I don't know if you saw, but Trinity Common was packed on midnight on Saturday.
Bumping on midnight. It was great.
Shout out to a lot of our fans that were there. Sorry we couldn't be there. I saw our friends at the F1 North, True North, that were there doing some live interviews after the race. Live interviews at 2 o'clock in the morning after a bar. That is peak content. Let's just say that.
It was perfect, especially after that chaos that ensued there in Melbourne.
I guess going into China, let's just talk really China really quickly. I guess, do you really have anybody that you're really gunning for this weekend, or are you just kind of hoping that will the weather hold up and it's a fresh new start? I'm curious to see how some of the rookies are going to do their first sprint race. How are they going to be able to compete? And when it comes to strategies, well, the teams that maybe did not do so well this weekend, how are they going to rebound, and especially in a track like this? Keep in mind, Joe is not driving this year. He's a reserve driver for Ferrari. So what will a lot more fans there be supporting Ferrari specifically? I'm curious to just kind of see the dynamics. And will there be some pushback against Helmut Marko for apparently some of his comments that he made towards Hadjar's crash?
He's a dinosaur. I just take his comments with a grain of salt, to be honest with you. I know he said like Hadjar's reaction was embarrassing. So you know what? In a way, I hope that is motivation for Isaac to have a fantastic weekend. I really want to see how the rookies that crashed out do, like Lawson, Bordarello, Doohan, Hadjar, Alonso. I want to see how they do. And I also want to see if Ferrari can come back here.
Yeah.
I really think this was just a misstep weekend. Again, just poor strategy cost them a lot of points. They need to have a good weekend to keep momentum, right? Because they've been pipped for P2 this year in the constructors, and they need to return form as fast as possible. So
yeah, the margin of error in this sport is very thin, and then keep in mind also the amount of points that are going to be up this weekend now that the sprint race is there. But we've also talked about how there's the fastest lap is not even as part of the 2025 season.
Which I don't mind, to be honest with you. I think it's better that that fastest lap point's not there.
And tune into this week. I will be doing my 60-second real takes, and wish me luck. What did you go? You went over 3?
I went 1 for 2. I went 1 for 2 this weekend.
Okay.
Last weekend.
So, any last things that we should end off with this week's episode of the F1 podcast?
I may have a hot take. This might be a little controversial. It's about
Go right
Melbourne.
ahead, Andrew. I'm not touching the stop button.
The past couple races that have been at Melbourne that have created excitement was because of a ton of safety cars and a ton of red flags. In my controversial opinion, I don't really think Albert Park is a really great racing track. And it's only exciting when we have those safety cars and we have um, the red flags come out
So,
in the weather.
do you find that because it is a much narrow track compared to maybe, let's say, Bahrain, that's why I think a lot of people would say Bahrain is a good track to start the season, especially for rookies. And like I even heard some of the commentators talk about how this is a difficult track to start your F1 career or your F1 season.
It is because it's very slippery, right? Because it's road. If you notice that lot, like the white, like the street paint was very slippery this weekend. And you're tiptoeing around. It's not like a real place. Yeah, it's very narrow, not many overtaking opportunities, but when there are, like, they're out of this world in terms of how the overtakes happen.
Yeah.
I think for Bahrain, yeah, it's not the most beautiful looking circuit in that case. I think that's what Albert Park has for them is, like, the views are really fun. It's really compact. It's a street circuit, obviously, but for racing, I think it's just much better at Bahrain as an opening track. And I'm saying Albert Park as an opening race. I know it's nostalgic, but I feel like it's not the best circuit to start at. And it's a little overrated to start at, in my opinion.
I guess leave it in the comment section. I'm curious to see what our fans would say. Do you think that Albert Park should be the track that starts the F1 season? Let's have a discussion. And should it always just start in Bahrain? I'm curious what everybody says, but I think we can end off that week's episode of, the Australian Grand Prix, which was a very wet race and a lot of DNFs. So hopefully we have a very different type of race in China this weekend. I am Jonathan Ricci. That is Andrew Cleary. Erica Hollingsworth could not be it. This could not be here for this week's episode, but tune in next week where we'll cover the Chinese Grand Prix. Will Ferrari rebound? Will McLaren still look really good? Will Liam Lawson score his first points this season? Will Haas rebound? Carlos Sainz, could he be on a podium? There is so much that is potential. Could Kimi Antonelli get on the podium for the first time as an 18-year-old? Tune in next week where we'll cover the 2025 Chinese Grand Prix. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you later. And happy St. Patrick's Day.